Hiya folks, I didn't complete the last recording. I don't know, there was a recording issue with YouTube, but I was starting to tell a story about my archaeological excavations at Caerwent. Now, the story is that I had taken a small group of people to Caerwent, and the year was, I think it was 1996 or 97, and looking at the back of the car park of the public house at Caerwent, I saw what I believed was a Roman wall, which was being uncovered from a load of sort of dry stone wall building and whatever. Anyway, back then I wasn't a qualified archaeologist, but I was slowly doing archaeological work as I'd been doing for years anyway. I'd been active in archaeology in the 1980s. This was 1987. So it wouldn't have been the first archaeological excavation that I'd undertaken. I'd managed a few excavations up until that point. So, I knew what I was doing. So I asked the owner if I could uncover this wall that had been uncovered on the ground. The wall was about a metre high. It was actually Roman. It was Roman fabric. And there was a quernstone in the wall as well, which was great. It's a proper Roman wall. So, knowing that the site was a scheduled ancient monument, I asked permission of Cadw, and they said, yeah, you can investigate the wall. So I did. So I undertook a few days of excavation there over a period of a few weeks. And then Cadw sent somebody out by the name of Sean Rees, who inspected my works and basically said, right, publish what you've got and go on from there. But what happened, she basically said, as long as you can work within that level, right, don't go any deeper, just work within that level. So that's what we did. So with the excavations, we found a lot of Roman black burnished ware, BB1 and BB2, and the hand-thrown stuff and the wheel-thrown stuff, and various different periods of pottery, lots of tile, occasional bits of Roman Samian ware, bits of metalwork, and a Roman coin from Emperor Trajan. So we had this Emperor Trajan coin, which was great. So up till that point, 1997 is the first Roman coin I'd ever found on an archaeological excavation, so it was quite great. Unfortunately, on one of the days where we were doing the excavation, both tyres burst on the motorway, and the artefacts that we had been excavating that day went sprawled over the motorway, the M4. It's quite dramatic. There was 4 of us in the car and a dog. No foul play, nothing like that. But we had 2 remold tyres. They went at the same time. So, and I asked the police officers at the time if they could, because they brushed the motorway, if they could put all that in a bag. And they said, yeah, that's fine. And we did. They never did. So the artefacts from that day were lost forever on the M4 motorway, which was a big shame. But all the other archaeological evidence we had. Anyway, long story short, I published a small report in Archaeology Wales, Council of British Archaeology, and a few years later, the owner, Glyn, one was told by Cadw that he had to pay for work on the wall to consolidate it. Now, the upsetting thing about this is that the archaeologist who was doing the work, Stephen Clark, I knew, but Stephen Clark was told specifically not to refer to me in the excavation report, even though part of it was already published in Archaeology Wales, Council of British Archaeology. He was told specifically not to mention me in the excavation report. He was to mention that he had been called in to evaluate the archaeology, they removed the quernstone, which was part of the wall, which I thought was absolutely horrific. I love Steve to bits, but he was only working under instruction. And when he completed the excavations, he did apologise, and because the instructions that he was told, and as part of the watching brief, he was told, I was quite disgusted by this because I was the archaeologist who had actually discovered it and done the one who'd done the initial research, and because Stephen Clark was a member of the Institute of Field Archaeology, which I wasn't at that stage. I was a few years later, but that's another story. And, and, and Stephen Clark said, right, I've got a load of artefacts for you. Here we go. Put them with the rest of your collection. And he just apologised. He gave me a copy of the report. So, you know, I had discovered the wall. I'd done the initial research. I'd recognised for discovering the wall. Part of it was published, and then I was erased from the history books for doing the work there. And somebody being told, a good friend of mine, that I was under no circumstance I was to be referred to in his report. So this is the world of archaeology in Wales, sadly. And, you know, it's quite disgusting the way archaeologists work in Wales, quite horrific. And it's something that has lived with me for a very, very long time. And I want to tell you another story in the next recording that I'm going to do. It's about Margam Park, and it's about the Caerwent Archaeological Trust. But something else I will say about the Caerwent is that even in the Time Team episode, I wasn't mentioned or any of my work that I undertook. And even today, the wall that I found that was clearly Roman, that's obviously the other excavation work by Stephen Clark, as part of the field, as part of the watching brief, it's not even been added on the map yet. It's not even there. And again, this is really bad archaeological practice, the way archaeologists work. I'm going to mention as well two things, and I'm going to make a note of what I'm going to do next, probably tomorrow. I want to mention two things. The next thing is that, you know, I remember when the basilica was being excavated at the end of the 1980s, 1990s, and one of the absolutely appalling thing that happened was that it was some wonderful plaster on the wall, right? And it still had colour, and the plaster itself remained on the wall. The elements got to it, and then the plaster just decayed and fell off the wall. And I thought that was absolutely horrific. Scheduled ancient monument, Roman plaster on the wall with painting on it, allowed to just fall off and decay. And again, this is Wales. If this had been Fishbourne Roman Palace, it was quite a big area of plaster as well. And before anyone jumps at the screen and says, oh, you're talking about the Romans again, Caerwent, well, 99% of everything built in Caerwent would have been built by people that were local under the supervision of Roman administrators, Roman artists. So that plaster itself would have actually been placed onto the wall by a local person and under the direction of somebody at the site. And again, I really, that lived with me for a very, very long time. The other thing I'm going to mention as well is about the archaeologist Stuart Wilson, which I love to bits. I love him to bits. He's got a Bachelor of Arts in Archaeology. I think it's from Durham University. Now, his work at Trellech is brilliant, but even though he's had BBC stuff and all the rest of it, he's not really recognised for the purchasing of archaeological site, excavating there. And I tell you this now, right? He gave a lecture to, this is why I can't stand Cardiff University, one of the reasons, and the Cardiff Archaeological Society, which are part of the Cardiff University. Stuart Wilson went to give a lecture to them once, beautifully illustrated. Love Stuart to bits. His lecture was brilliant, right? So when he got to the end, there was a hand put up in the audience. Basically, it said, "Oh, how can you be telling us about the excavations at Trellech when you're not a proper archaeologist? You're not. You don't actually have a Bachelor of Arts in archaeology." And Stuart basically said, "Yeah, I've got a Bachelor of Arts in archaeology from Durham." "Oh, but that's not a real degree, is it?" And this is from the cowboys at Cardiff University and the Cardiff Archaeological Society. They allowed one of their members to criticise Stuart when he'd gone out of his way from Chepstow to give this lecture, right? So this undermined his lecture after he'd given it. And then there was people doubting Thomas's in the audience saying, "Oh, your work at Trellech is fake, and that what you're finding isn't really medieval, and you faked it all and all the rest of it." And this is to an archaeologist who's qualified, highly experienced, owns his own archaeological site in Trellech, and you've got these people doubting him, deliberately there to undermine him and to attack him. Love you to bits, Stuart, and you didn't deserve that at all. And hopefully I'll be out there soon to help you on your site. This is how archaeology works when you're not a member of the establishment. I used to be a member of the Institute of Field Archaeology. Tell you that one again. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.